The Shadow in the Cellar. Chapter 1. Whispers in the Dark. The town of Ashwood was a quiet, unassuming place. Nestled in a valley and surrounded by dense forests, it was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were as rare as strangers. That is until the old Cranston house stood empty and brooding at the edge of town, casting a long, unsettling shadow over the community. It was mid-October when the Johnson family moved into the Cranston house. Ben and Sarah Johnson, along with their 8-year-old daughter, Emily, had left the city seeking peace and a slower pace of life. The house, with its large, decrepit frame and sprawling cellar, seemed perfect in its imperfection, a fixer-upper with character. From the moment they arrived, Emily felt the house's eyes upon her. It was an ancient, tired feeling, as if the house itself were watching and waiting. The first night, she heard whispers in the dark. They were faint, like the murmurs of the wind through a graveyard, yet unmistakable. She thought it was her parents at first, but when she tiptoed to their room, they were sound asleep. The next morning, Emily told her parents about the whispers. Ben dismissed it as the house settling, and Sarah assured her it was just her imagination. But the whispers persisted, growing louder each night, weaving through her dreams and waking hours alike. Chapter 2. The Cellar Door. Ben decided to explore the cellar one afternoon, thinking that a thorough inspection might ease Emily's fears. The cellar door was old and warped, the wood splintering with age. It groaned in protest as he forced it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A damp, musty smell greeted him as he stepped down, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the blackness, revealing rows of shelves lined with dusty jars and tools. Cobwebs hung like ghostly curtains, and the air was thick with neglect. As Ben ventured deeper, the temperature seemed to drop, and an inexplicable chill ran down his spine. In the far corner of the cellar, the flashlight beam revealed an old trunk, its lock rusted and broken. Curiosity piqued, Ben pried it open. Inside, he found a collection of faded photographs, yellowed letters, and a small, leather-bound journal. He took the journal upstairs, hoping it might hold some answers about the house's history. That evening, as Emily slept fitfully, Ben and Sarah pored over the journal. It belonged to a man named Arthur Cranston, the original owner of the house. The entries were filled with tales of strange occurrences and eerie events that mirrored their own experiences. The final entry sent a shiver down their spines. The shadow grows stronger. It whispers my name, promising horrors if I do not comply. I fear for my soul. Chapter 3. The Unseen Presence. The more Ben and Sarah read, the more they realize the house was not merely old, but cursed. The whispers were not the house settling, but the echoes of a malevolent presence that had plagued the Cranstons for generations. They decided not to tell Emily, hoping to shield her from the growing dread that clung to their thoughts. But the house had other plans. Emily began waking up with bruises and scratches she couldn't explain. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and shadows seemed to move of their own accord. One night, Emily woke screaming, claiming a dark figure had been standing at the foot of her bed, watching her with hollow eyes. Desperation drove Ben to seek help. He contacted a local historian, Mrs. Hawthorne, who was well versed in the town's lore. She agreed to visit the house, her face grim as she recounted the legends of the Cranston family and their tragic fate. The Cranstons were said to have dabbled in dark rituals, Mrs. Hawthorne explained. Arthur Cranston, in particular, was rumored to have made a pact with a shadowy entity. They believed it would grant them wealth and power, but instead, it brought madness and death. The house has been cursed ever since, and those who live there are doomed to suffer. Chapter 4. A Desperate Plan. Determined to protect his family, Ben decided they would leave the house. But as they packed, the house seemed to resist. Objects flew off shelves, doors slammed shut, and the air grew thick with an oppressive force. The whispers turned to screams, filling their heads with a cacophony of terror. In a moment of clarity, Ben remembered the trunk in the cellar. He rushed down, battling the suffocating darkness, and retrieved the letters. Among them was a letter from Arthur Cranston to his brother, detailing a ritual that might banish the entity. The ritual required a sacrifice, but not of flesh and blood, rather, a personal belonging of great sentimental value. Ben and Sarah gathered items from around the house: Emily's favorite doll, Sarah's wedding ring, and Ben's father's pocket watch. They placed them in the center of the living room, following the instructions with meticulous care. As they chanted the incantation, the house seemed to tremble. Shadows writhed and twisted, converging on the items in a frenzy. A deafening roar filled the air, and the temperature plummeted. Just when it seemed the darkness would consume them, there was a blinding flash of light, and then, silence. Chapter 5, Dawn of Hope. When the light faded, the house felt different. The oppressive weight was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. The shadows were no longer malevolent shapes but mere playthings of the morning sun. The whispers had ceased, and the air felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. Exhausted but relieved, the Johnsons collapsed on the floor, holding each other tightly. Mrs. Hawthorne, who had witnessed the ritual from a safe distance, assured them the entity was gone. "The house is cleansed," she said. "But the scars of the past remain. You should leave this place and never look back." They didn't need to be told twice. By the end of the week, they had moved to a new home, far from Ashwood and its dark history. Emily's nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of sunlight and laughter. Ben and Sarah found solace in each other, grateful to have escaped the grip of the shadow. Years later, the Cranston house still stood, empty and forgotten. The townspeople avoided it, whispering about the dark days when the Johnsons had lived there. But they, too, eventually moved on, and the house became just another relic of the past, a reminder of the shadows that lurk in the darkest corners of the human soul. And somewhere, deep in the woods, the whispers began anew, searching for another soul to ensnare.